Hidden Figures tells the story of three female African Americans who worked at NASA during the height of the space race. The film aims to highlight their major contributions in John Glenn's orbit of the Earth, as well as the various challenges they faced due to their race and gender. Let's dive in. Welcome everyone to the Collector's Cut. I am Peter, and joining me as always is David.
Here at NASA, we all pee the same color.
This is a movie podcast, and we are rounding out our little trilogy of herstory movies, which is true stories based on women in America, and today we are looking at Hidden Figures from 2016, which tells the story of three black women in sort of late 1950s, early 1960s, working at NASA, and their role in kind of different departments at NASA, with basically with the calculating, with the numbers, and in one case with the engineering. So we'll get into all that, of course. We'll start spoiler free as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get into the spoilers, and if you're enjoying the show on YouTube, do hit the like button on there. It helps out a bunch if you do. And of course you can support everything over at Patreon, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, and get some bonuses, but I'll tell you more about those at the end of the episode. So yes, I'd actually seen this one before. Yeah, there are two films we did. I hadn't seen them before, but this was a revisiting for me.
All right.
Did you know much about the premise of this one?
No, the premise, yeah. This is one of those ones that for whatever reason the YouTube Shorts like algorithm was like, here's the whole movie, just spread over like 30-second cut up moments. So yeah, I knew quite a bit of what was going on in here, the premise of it. I wouldn't say I knew the whole beat for beat plot, but I feel like all the bigger moments I probably got before I actually sat down to watch it.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, this is an interesting one because we're going further back in history to a point. Well, technically a part of On the Basis for Sex was set before this, but only a little bit of it.
Not the main part, doesn't count.
Yeah. Most of this, though, is further back in history, and it's tied to the space race, which is inherently, I think, kind of a more, glamorous topic. It's like, oh, it's a space race, it's exciting, we're getting to the moon, and all that business. I
mean, yeah, it definitely is more visually appealing than courtroom drama, but
yeah,
I can't say, in terms of the end results, I feel like women's rights is kind of up there comparatively.
Yes, I'm not disputing that. But, this is dealing with some more specific issues, particularly that of race and segregation and all the other various obstacles these characters have to go through. I suppose the first things first is this movie, if you go to its Wikipedia page and you go to historical accuracy, there is a giant section talking about like the differences versus reality. And I'm sure there's a lot of obviously, there's always a lot of things that are changed a little bit here or there and stuff, but this one does seem to have a lot of things that people have taken umbrage with how it's moved things around, or how it's, maybe one thing's been swapped between two characters that originally someone else had to do, or that kind of thing. Definitely there's some dramatization going on here for sure, but
oh yeah. I didn't look too deeply into it like I did the other ones, because the other ones were frankly a lot shorter in terms of their differences. But the big thing that I knew right off the bat from this one is it does the biopic thing where it just rearranges certain events, certain things to make it more narratively fulfilling. Like, yeah. I don't think it's not a major spoiler in any sort of way to say that one of the characters in this movie gets married, and that was over and done with before most of the plot happened in real life. Like, it was not as interwoven as everything else.
Yeah, also, one of the things that happens to one of the characters at the end actually happened before one of the other characters ever even started working at NASA. So there's this stuff like that, and then some stuff that's there for more dramatized kind of, glossy Hollywood kind of feel-good moments that never really happened and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That said, we're not going to try and like nitpick those as we go through when we start talking about it, because honestly, we don't know which things are entirely accurate or not. Obviously, we've read a few things that are inaccurate, but for the most part, we'll just kind of treat it as a movie with characters, and this is the story they're presenting, and it's, has its place in history, but clearly is a very fictionalized version of what actually happened. So, yeah, but all three of the main characters did exist. They are real people and did achieve the things the movie said they achieved, by and large. All of the white characters in the movies, I understand, are all fictional, and a big part of that is that they had to compress like a more complex management system into one character played by Kevin Costner. So it's like we're going to have one guy instead of 50. We're going to have Sheldon from Big Bang Theory instead of another 50 characters.
Look, I'm gonna lay it down here. I'm sure that the actor behind Sheldon Cooper, I don't have it up immediately.
Jim Parsons.
That's it. I'm sure he has some amount of a range. This movie does not trust him to experiment with that range.
Yeah, he just feels like Sheldon, but in 1961. Yep. That's kind of the vibe you get from him.
It was really off-putting when they did the bit where they were like, "Oh, we finally got the equation working," and then he said "bazinga." I was taken off guard.
Yeah. Also, Glenn Powell's in this, and okay, I shouldn't say all the white people are fictional. His character's the one that isn't fictional. He is John Glenn, who is very much a real man. But the problem is, though, he's a famous person, right? People know who John Glenn is, so yes, he's here.
Right. You can't have... Look, if we're talking about getting a man into space, you can't take the poster boy for the mission and then say, oh, yeah, that's John Johnson. Don't worry about it.
The astronauts are the exception, and they're fairly minor roles, but all of the people that are otherwise interacting with their main characters are by and large fictional.
Yes.
But this is Glenn Powell in 2016, so this is him pretty much during or just after he did Scream Queens, which is where I first encountered him. So to me, this is like Chad Radwell. Obviously, now he's in a bunch of movies. He's constantly popping up and stuff, but... This was more of a novelty at the time to see Chad Radwell pop up in a movie in such a prominent, less douchebaggy role that I would just do him in.
Well, I mean, this was also 2 years after The Expendables 3. He was such a hot commodity at the time.
Yeah, but I saw that before I saw Scream Queens, so I did not know who he was in that, so it never clicked.
Fair enough.
I didn't remember he was in that.
This was right after Scream Queens. This was the first thing he did as soon as that show ended.
Yeah, and then Mahershala Ali's in a supporting role as well. He's another big name, of course. And then I guess the last one to mention really would be Kirsten Dunst is also here as well. Also playing a fictional character, as far as I could tell from a quick looking.
I mean, she's got a name, but she's just vaguely racist woman.
That doesn't really narrow it down, I don't think, in Virginia in like the early 1960s.
No, that's true. Also, I was surprised this was all Virginia. I thought for sure all the NASA stuff was down in Florida already at that point, but guess not.
Well, isn't some of it in Houston? Isn't that why they always say Houston?
Yeah, fair enough. I guess it's a whole countrywide thing.
Because that's what they say. They say Houston, right? Houston, we have a problem. It's like literally the famous quote from Apollo 13.
Well, I didn't watch that one, Pete. I watched this one, and all he said is, guys, there's a button up here.
I mean, maybe this is a simplification, but it seems like they launched the rockets in Florida, mission controls in Texas and Houston, and then all the numbers are being crunched in Virginia. That seems to be the makeup of this.
Nah, I mean, that makes sense. It makes sense that there's something closer to DC for the people who need to go up and down the chain of command and whatnot.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it didn't always stay that way. I don't know. But that's just based on what they say in this movie. I'm like, well, I guess some of it's happening in Virginia. So yeah, I mean that's the setup of it. We have our three characters who are in slightly different kind of. Well, they're not all in different fields to begin with, actually, but they kind of like diverge into different fields as the story unfolds.
Yeah. They're all good with numbers and STEM field stuff and whatever else like that, but that kind of just boils them down into the generic computer area where they're just running numbers all day, but each of them has their own little specialty that they want to go into. Yeah,
they're literally called computers, right? Before, much like Dune, they just have people that are computers, and that's what their job was. So yeah, the three leads, who we've kind of mentioned all the supporting cast, the three leads are Taraji P. Henson, who plays Catherine, who is very much the lead. She is the main character and gets by far the most time. And then the other two are Octavia Spencer and Janelle Monáe, and those have their own roles as well. So Those are the three main actors that we're following throughout this.
I mean, just to lay a specific point on it, without it being too spoilery, is that Taraji P. Henson, Catherine, is the one who is more focused on the numbers. She proves herself that way. Octavia Spencer is looking for more of a management role, but they keep on overlooking her because obviously she's a black woman in Virginia. And then Janelle Monáe wants to go into engineering. But again, same thing as Octavia Spencer's character. They keep overlooking her because she doesn't have the right credits.
Yes. There's a lot of the phrase "this is just the way it is" comes up a few times during.
I have a lot of thoughts on that in a positive way.
Yeah, so that set the playing field. So, David, what did you think of Hidden Figures?
I definitely think out of this and On the Basis of Sex, this is the better one. Obviously, it's hard to compare with She Said. It's such a wildly different movie comparatively, but I do like that this one it's taken its narrative and it does make it feel like, okay, while we are telling a biography, it doesn't feel like this is on the same level of hero worship as the last one was. It doesn't feel like we are glamorizing anything. The one thing that we kept coming back to in the last review was we wanted it to get a little bit dirtier. We wanted it to look in on the specific conflicts a little bit more. And I think that this one does a much better job at that, where it's not shying away from the little things that racism does, that the little things that like the sexism and all that stuff does throughout the course of this movie. It's tiny little things like when John Glenn comes in, they are standing just like 15 feet away. All the black women are standing like slightly apart from the rest of the group. And it's just kind of expected that he's not going to go over there. He's not going to go to that section. And it's tiny stuff like that that really, I think, sells this movie and makes it a little bit bigger than On the Basis of Sex was in terms of examining this time, examining the lives of these people and how they had to go through these things. On top of what you were saying of the idea of that's just the way it is, I also really like the fact that in this movie, it doesn't feel like there's an out and out villain, but it does feel like there are different varying degrees of people who are just comfortable with the way things are and want to preserve that status quo. Nobody's coming out with the mustache twirling of like, no, she has to go to the other bathroom because screw her. She's black. She has to go that way. Everyone's just like, well, it's weird if you go to this bathroom and we don't want to be weird. And I think that that's so telling of the era. Like I know that there are people who would be mustache twirling villains, but I'm glad that in this particular thing where the mission is what comes first, we don't have that, you know? So no, overall, I enjoyed the movie. I don't think it's the most high art. I don't think this is like the most incredible story ever told, but I think that it does a good job of getting these people across, presenting their lives as more complex than just, oh, they did the amazing thing and look how cool they are because of it. And I had a decent time watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little surprised to hear you say that it gave you more of those rough edges, I suppose, because I still felt that this was very Hollywood and very saccharine in a lot of ways. It did the thing where right from the opening where it's showing you Catherine as a child and the piano was just coming in. Oh, she's a genius, she's a prodigy with numbers, piano plays, and that piano theme coming in, and I felt like a lot of the kind of the big moments, the emotional moments, like they're perfectly fine and well done, but it definitely has that kind of sheen of the movie, like try to compare it to some other films, but like it has that sheen of like, okay, we're going to tackle some of these subjects, we're going to look at racism, and we're going to do it but with this kind of almost soft touch, this soft glove of like, okay, we're going to bring the things up, we're going to have characters address these things, but we're never necessarily going to have anyone feel like we're in danger, and there's going to be this hopeful kind of optimism that's you almost know for a fact that someone's going to do something right, like, as the movie goes on, to like course correct and try and make things better or change things, or there's kind of like almost like a comforting tone to the whole thing, which almost I think ruffles me a little bit, because I'm like, if you want to do something that's exploring this topic and how, you know, how unequal this is, and how shitty it is that someone's been passed over for something, or how shitty it is that someone has to run to a different building to use the bathroom or whatever, then it should probably be, I don't know, just have a bit more bite to it, I guess, than kind of this like Hollywood like comfort blanket like nostalgia sheen that it otherwise has. What, you know, it's very sentimental, I guess is the word I'd use.
I mean, I get the feeling that you're giving me there, but I don't feel like it's there for the racism bits. I like they have all the other stuff in their lives and all the stuff that they're doing with NASA and all that. And I agree the sentimental, like, look at how good there's literally a moment from Good Will Hunting in this movie where it's like, who did this equation? And they're like, oh, it was the underestimated black woman who left just a minute ago. Like, I get that, but when it comes down to the racism stuff, I feel like it's doing it in a way where we don't, at this point, it doesn't feel like the violence is necessary for our characters, but it is present in the story. I'm more so thinking of there's news broadcasts and stuff like that are brought up of like a firebomb bus and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want violence. I'm not saying I want like the
yeah, but like the rough edges is what I'm saying. Yeah. No, like, so when I say rough edges, I mean something that feels a bit more raw, right? And for as much as like I did have critiques, as she said, being a bit dry, it's a lot more raw as a movie than either of these other two that we've done. And I think this one, when I'm talking about some of the stuff having that Hollywood sheen, that sentimental kind of like good will prevail in the end tone, like, it's not even so much the moments of like the little subtle racisms or like the people looking at the characters when they show up in a place where they're not used to seeing them or anything like that. I'm talking more about when heroic Kevin Costner stands up and does something to change things or make a speech on her behalf or whatever it is. I don't want to get too specific, it's all spoilery stuff, but whenever it does any of that stuff, I'm like, oh, this is so inspirational. He's doing the right thing. It feels so fabric. And I did check this. Those big moments did not happen in real. Well, partly because the character didn't exist in real life, but no one did some of the things that he did in this movie. So I wrestle with this topic because obviously, by virtue of they did the things that happened in the movie, obviously racism at NASA was not like a horribly down-putting thing by the time that they got to where they were going. Like, it was not, yes, they were fighting against some flow, but it's not like top down there was management that was saying like, no, we're never going to allow this to happen, whatever, because they did. They succeeded to get through. The movie chooses to represent that, like you said, through Kevin Costner's character, through one guy who, whether for the point of the narrative, or I'm going to get a little bit cynical here and say, Hollywood loves to have the white savior character. And it was jumping across that line back and forth for me for like, is he just the guy who's like not racist and therefore is just like, this is stupid, let's just focus on the mission? Or is he the character of, I'm bashing down the sign that says that racism lives here and I'm taking it out? It's like, okay, that's a little bit over the top.
Yeah, that word savior is the word that I was kind of coming to mind a little bit, and it's not like it's as focused on him as other like savior movies would be, but it does kind of feel like, it's, I don't know, it's always him. It's always him who's going to turn around and eventually ask the right question, just because he's not asked it. He's just, he notices something, he's like, wait, why is this a thing? Oh, we've been doing that because of this? Oh, well, we're going to change all that right now. And I'm like, I can appreciate the idea that it was almost just ignorance on his part, and like maybe you're trying to say something with that. A lot of people don't even notice that there's this injustice happening because you just don't notice it, and then once you are aware of it, you know. So I can appreciate that to a point, but it's very, very much cue the piano music. He's going to do the right thing. Characters are going to smile. the racist people in the room are going to look kind of shocked, like, oh, I don't know about this, right? We're going to do that, and it feels a little bit like Hollywood 101. It feels, I don't want to call it Oscar bait, right? I'm not necessarily saying that, but it's tiptoeing on the Oscar bait line at times with how it handles certain scenes and situations, as opposed to feeling like it's actually giving me a gut punch where I'm like feeling something like truly meaningful about how it like portrays the journey that the character's going on.
Yeah, no, there's one sequence in this movie that I would label as truly emotional. Like, the character has reached a breaking point in terms of the adversity they're facing, and they get to stretch their legs and do a good acting bit with it. Like, we have one of those moments, and it's not as far into the movie as you would think it would be. It's very early on, all things considered. And
it's about middle. It's about halfway through.
Yeah, it's right about halfway through. But it's because of that I feel like the movie is structured in a way where, yes, there's this overarching idea of the racist establishment and how they weren't going to get ahead because of that stuff. But by the time we hit the halfway point, they kind of are like, just assume, unless a character directly says otherwise, that we've dealt with that. And now it's just a matter of how difficult is it to get to the moon? Like, that's the hard part now.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a very strange thing, and especially since like one of the inaccuracies that I was reading about is that the real Catherine, like said, yeah, there was segregation at NASA, and there was obviously some of that stuff going on, but she actually has said on the record that she never really felt that much of it herself, because in the job that she was in, everyone was just so heads down, we have to get this done, that it wasn't this constant thing that was like hanging over when she was at work. So it's kind of like, obviously the things that it's showing and telling us about are absolutely like valid in the sense that they are portraying what lots of people did go through at certain points in this era. It just didn't necessarily happen specifically to her in the way that it happened in the movie.
Yeah. And that's really where you got to come down on, like, how do you appreciate your biopic? Like, do you want it to be absolutely faithful representative of the person that we're talking about and telling their story? Or do you want it to mix and blend and do some other stuff in order to tell a larger idea of the person instead of just the specifics of what actually happened?
This is the thing, though, is that I feel like it would be more challenging to do one that's more authentic here, because it wouldn't have these big emotional dramatic swings. It would have to actually, do a lot more with nuance. It would have to do something a bit more intricate with the character, and maybe compare and contrast that with the other characters and maybe what they're going through around the same time. Although it wasn't all at the same time, despite the fact that the movie portrays it that way. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I do think the movie is perfectly solid in its direction. It's perfectly solid in the way that it the performances, the way it portrays certain things. You never obviously have to understand the math that they're talking about, and that's okay. You just have to understand the thing that they're trying to solve. And yeah, I think the movie does a good job of getting that across at any given point.
Yeah, the only thing, I mean, I'm into math. That's probably why it was suggested to me in my YouTube feed so much. But like, the only thing that I thought they didn't explain well enough that maybe some people didn't understand is the core problem at the end of the movie is that they need to invent a new math in order to translate between they said an elliptical orbit to a parabolic trajectory. And I feel like they never specifically like needled down as to what the hell does that even mean? Like, what's the problem here? But maybe just repeating it enough was enough for people to get it. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's the problem then. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I took it to mean you have to pivot out of this orbit into a new thing, and that's just really difficult. And Alex, just accept that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, pretty much that's what it is. So, yeah, good enough.
Yeah, that'll do nicely. There's definitely parts of it that feel a little bit kind of like. Like some of the family life stuff feels like it's very, very minor.
Oh yeah. I every time we cut to the family life stuff, I kept expecting it to have something, anything where like there's a bit where Kevin Costner's like, all right, because of the space race, everyone's going to start working late. And they already had a bit where the daughters of Catherine are like, oh, you work so much nowadays, Mom, we barely see you. I was expecting it to turn into something. It did not. It's just there for fluff in the background.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they wanted to sort of try and like get across some of the the three main characters, these three women, what their family lives were like, the fact that they either were in relationships or had kids or whatever it was, and that's like fine to a point, but it never really kind of amounts to all that much in the movie outside of just kind of like, oh, they're also balancing this, but they also never really do anything with it to a great extent to make it feel like it was like necessary in the movie.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, a little bit strange on that side. It's, yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know how you would have done this, admittedly, but I almost wish it leaned into what the title of the movie is a little bit more. Like, like maybe it actually shows, like, you know, because if the movie's called Hidden Figures, then give me a sense that after, like, some of these things are accomplished, right? Because this movie all builds up to the first orbit of the Earth, right? The Americans' first orbit of the Earth, right? That's what it's building up to. It would almost have been nice that if after that, or maybe even after the moon landing, say, right? Because, you know, Catherine, the real person, did go on to also do calculations for that and worked at NASA until, like, the 80s or something like that. She was there for a long time. It would have been nice at some point to maybe, like, see some of the I don't know, like, this idea of, like, yeah, being overlooked even after the accomplishments or something, and, like, kind of having to, like, I don't know, like, I don't know, just to show the level of influence, the level of importance, and how instrumental, like, across the board kind of thing, and how no one really knows that these people existed unless they unless they specifically looked into this sort of history or had been taught it in school or whatever it is. It kind of, I don't know, it felt like, especially like the other two characters to some extent, especially Mary, Janelle Monáe's character Mary, I felt like got a little bit of the short end of the stick here, because it felt like there was like a whole chunk of maybe story with her that could have kept going with that it didn't.
Oh yeah.
And as a result, she actually kind of disappears for very large stretches of the movie, and feels like probably like the third out of the three in terms of screen time and in terms of how much story she actually gets.
I have to assume, like, you know, it was a book. It was a nonfiction book written beforehand that was turned into a movie. But in terms of the Hollywood version, I have to assume that this is just 3 is the magic number. You got to have 3 storylines ongoing, and we got to follow 3. Can't follow 2 people. You can follow 1 or 3. It's nowhere in between.
Yeah, it was funny though, is that I think Mary's story actually in some ways is like the most interesting to me, because she has more kind of like establishment things she actually butts head with. She has to kind of go out and try and solve that in some way.
Oh, and yeah. No, she is far and away the most interesting character.
Yeah, and becoming this, you know, the first engineer, right? The first, definitely the first black woman engineer, maybe even the first female engineer at NASA. That was a bit unclear to me.
Yeah, not sure. I mean, it would be, that's part of this movie as well, is that, like I said, somewhere around the middle, it feels like they solved the problem of racism at NASA, but they still have to have a little bit of adversity. So several characters in this, including Sheldon, are just also misogynistic. Like, they're also just like, but you're a woman. You can't possibly do this.
Yes, you can't come into the man's bathroom no matter how much you change things.
I mean, yeah, that's still kind of a thing.
It's a debate. It's still, I mean, unisex bathrooms are a thing, but it's still something that some people will die in a hell for debating.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's not brought up in this movie, but yeah, it feels like during, I mean, it's spoilery, so I won't say too much, but when we get to that one sequence, it's like, I feel like if we're going for peak efficiency here, we've got a few more barriers we could knock down along the way.
Yeah, no, I was only just making that joke because obviously the idea of the separate race bathrooms are a big talking point in the movie. I don't know. Like, I guess I feel like maybe like some of their careers after where this movie ends might have been more interesting.
Well, that's specifically the Mary character, where I looked up like a little bit of, okay, where does she end up? And like, she stayed with NASA long enough that she was literally like the top engineer. She was like the most senior engineer there at NASA. She could not be promoted any further, and that's like the only reason that she took another job. And that was like, I want to see her whole life. Like, show me how she rose up that ladder and got to that point, especially when all we're seeing is this first, like, I don't know, year, not even.
Yeah, and honestly, the one of the things that I read that were made up for the movie is kind of one of her main things in this. Like it's just factually incorrect. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of a shame. I don't know. I often leave these sort of sentimental biopics with this kind of feeling, but I don't know what I necessarily wanted more than this, but I felt like you said this one isn't hero worship like you felt On the Basis of Sex was, and I guess I kind of agree with that to an extent, but I still feel like it's very much we just want to sort of look back at these people and feel happy about it, rather than we want to actually tell a story that feels like it's got real ups and downs.
Yeah. No, I get that. I understand where that sentiment comes from. I do think that I'm probably a little bit more in the idea of the ups and downs than you are, just because of, like, I think they did the racism and all that sort of stuff in a very interesting way from my perspective, where it's not that I want it to be violent. I'm glad that it wasn't like this violent sort of deep South, like, there's no safety anywhere in town or anything like that. But that, to me, makes this silent acceptance and that's just the way things are by everyone so much more interesting to me, where it comes with this deeper level of historically how everyone's just grown up this way. It's insane to think that they can make these changes, and then slowly there is just these slides to the left, these abilities to get in there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not asking for like violence or darker storylines per se. Just, I don't know, just something that feels a little bit. I'm coming back to that word raw. Just something that feels a little bit more real in the moment as opposed to a movie scene, right? And some of the scenes where Kirsten Dunst comes up to talk to Dorothy, Octavia Spencer's character, and like these little passive like comments are happening, it just feels very sterile and this very kind of, it doesn't feel like real moments to me in a sense where I want to feel it a little bit more than this.
Oh yeah, no, I get that. So much of this does feel, we've already established that how much of it isn't real, how much of it is made up for the sake of it. A lot of it feels like that's for the Hollywood, like telling the narrative, getting the emotional hits. But the trade-off to that is you do kind of feel this, oh, this is a story. This isn't a thing that actually happened. This isn't something where, this person existed and went through these hard times, and I can see them doing it. It feels, I mean, look, I'm going to phrase this in a way that's not spoilery, but the final bit in this movie, like the last challenge, the last hurdle that they have to get over in terms of the calculating, feels so manufactured and so fake that, like, immediately I'm like, okay, so everything is fiction. Like, all of this surrounding bit here is fiction. There's no reason. Well, and I thought for certain that they were also going to have this coincide with her wedding. And I was like, now you're just pulling one thread too far from me.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen too, but she was actually already, that was already happened at that point. No, I mean, technically the thing that happens, like, and one, the essence of it, the essence thing at the core did really happen, but the timeline was very different than what the movie presents.
Yeah. No.
Very, very different.
That's like me coming out and saying, like, caveman invented fire, and then a short while later, the personal computer. Like, technically, did it happen? Kinda.
And in the grand scheme of human existence, it was a short while.
Yeah, barely any time passed. But, some things still happened in the middle.
Yeah, like, I don't want to come across tonight. There's definitely this kind of Hollywood feeling to a lot of this where, every time, like, like a song starts up and like we do like a bit of a montage, or Kevin Costner's being kind of the tough but fair good guy and making his speeches. It just kind of feels like it's in a shtick. It's in like kind of a series of tropes where, maybe it'll win some awards. I don't know if it did, but it kind of feels like it could win some awards. It has that kind of vibe to it, as opposed to being something that's going for my jugular. And when I say that, again, I don't want people to think I want violence or I want dark scenes. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for something that feels like a proper character drama, as opposed to something that feels more like we're doing, like, I don't know, like the any phrase I can think of here sounds far too harsh, but something that feels a bit more like a after school special about teaching the audience about like what it was like in 1961.
Yeah, no, I get you. I get what you're saying there. It's been way too long since I've watched it, but the God, I can't remember the name. Is it just X? The Denzel Washington Malcolm X movie?
Malcolm X. No,
is it Malcolm X? Okay,
I think so. Yeah.
That one is one, obviously it's been like a decade since I watched it, but my memory is that's kind of obviously the same time period, but that one gets that sort of rawness to it. It feels like there is this depth, and obviously it does have some violence as well, but even ignoring that, I think that that's something where if we're looking at the time, that's something where it does have just that extra oomph that makes it something more real rather than the glamorized look that you're getting across in this one.
Yeah, I think something you actually that I think stuck out to me is you called the scene a Goodwill Hunting scene, and I kind of appreciate that comparison, but I think I would like the movie to kind of reframe it a little bit and sort of really point out it's only that because the other characters in the room could never have expected her to be able to do it, as opposed to, oh, isn't it magical? This guy, in case of Goodwill Hunting, is just a genius naturally. Like, that's more fantastical almost, whereas this shouldn't feel fantastical. This should feel like, no, they're incorrectly acting like it's fantastical, but the tone of the scene, like, because the music's like doing the piano and it's like inspirational. I don't think it should be inspirational and like magical feeling. I feel like that's like what the white characters in the scene are feeling because they're ignorant. It should be more, not cold, but more just matter of fact. Like, of course she can do this. We've already established that she's good at this. And I wish it didn't treat the whole prodigy thing as this, like, oh, she's a chosen one at the start of the movie. Because I think it made her feel like a character and less like a real person.
Yeah, no, I get that. I can see exactly where you're coming from, where because they treat her like, regardless of her race or gender or anything, like she is so special, she is already so gifted and talented here, that it doesn't feel like anytime they're pointing out these things, it is because of the fact that she is a black woman. It just feels like, no, she's special because she's special. Like, the fact that she's a black woman feels incidental, and yet the movie also wants to play it up of like, see, it's important. And it's like, well, this doesn't feel empowering or anything. This just feels like this one woman happened to be really, really good at things.
Well, it's why it's a shame the other two don't get as much a fair share of time. And don't get me wrong, I think Henson is probably my favourite actor of the three, and I kind of understand why she does get more time. But, like we said, Mary's story, like this idea that she had to kind of like try and get around rules that were stopping her advancing in a career that she wanted to have. Dorothy being smart enough to see the way the wind was blowing and sort of try to like safeguard herself and the people who worked with her. Like, all those things are actually in some ways just as inspiring because they're really smart in different ways, but they're not like, I'm just magically amazing with numbers the way that Catherine, and I'm not discounting like the real Catherine, I'm sure, was a goddamn genius with numbers. I'm sure that's all true, but it just feels like there was other types of like success and struggles between the characters that the other two get a little shortchanged on in comparison, I think.
Oh yeah, no, I think this movie could have been not fixed. Obviously, it did well on its own right, but I think I would have appreciated it more if all three of them got equal time. I think that that's something where, as soon as we start focusing so heavily on what obviously is the most thrilling and interesting part, which is this trajectories in orbit and stuff like that, you lose a little bit of the interesting stories of how does she become an engineer? How do they learn this new computer language and stuff like that, which both are interesting just within their own right, ignoring the idea of it being NASA.
Yeah. No, this is all good stuff. And, you know, in the case of Dorothy, she's literally getting good at something that no one else is good at yet because it's such a new thing. And it's, you know, there's like, I was like, hey, that was like so incredibly smart of her to do that. And I don't even know, actually, I didn't even read how much of that was true or not true. Honestly, I didn't see anything about it. The only thing I know about Dorothy that's inaccurate in the movie is that one of her character bits is that she wants to become a supervisor, like a promotion, and she keeps getting looked over. In reality, she'd been a supervisor since like 1948 or something like that.
Look, I want to call this out before the spoiler section.
Yep.
This movie, being a biopic, it does the "Where Are They Now" section. And as I was watching the movie, I was doing just a little bit of research over to the side. I was like, oh, how much of this happened? How much of that happened? By the time that it hit the "Where Are They Now" text, I'm like, wow, they're picking their words very carefully to be technically true, but also somehow make it like, oh, but it's what happened in the movie happened, quote unquote, but also what happened in reality happened. And they're only saying the bits that exist in both realities. They're not saying how any of this actually didn't match up.
That's interesting. Yeah, they can't contradict anything they've just shown you, so they're being coy.
Like, for instance, like I said, she was married long before the main character, Catherine, was married long before like anything else in this movie happened. And in the "Where Are They Now" bit, they specifically mention her marriage, but they don't tie it to a year. They tie it to her age. They're like, oh, at age 97, she's been married for 56 years. And it's like, well, that's because if you said the actual year and then said 56 years, it'd be obvious that there was some fudging of the numbers going on here.
Yep. Yeah, but we have to have a romance blossoming, though, in the movie.
Look, I don't mind Mahershala Ali in this. I think he does a fine job with what he's got. He just doesn't got a lot.
Oh yeah, it's a very thankless role in a lot of ways. But hey, all right, I think we should probably get into the spoilers then, so we can get into things properly. So spoilers for Hidden Figures from this point on. You have been warned. So, I mean, where to begin? I you know, like when we start the story, you know, we after the little prologue of like, hey, Catherine's a chosen one, take her to this school and let her show her magic. We open with the three ladies going to work, their car's broken down, and a police officer's strolling up, and they're like, okay, right, you know, they turn to like Mary and say, hey Mary, you've got a bit of a smart mouth, maybe you know, hold that back for this next bit. And the cop's giving them shit, he clearly has an attitude, but when they mention that they all work in NASA and he's seeing their badges and he starts giving his opinion on, oh, we have to beat the Russians, have you met those astronaut boys? And like, oh yeah, we've met them a bunch of times, you know, they're wonderful, blah, blah. Like he all of a sudden starts changing his tune, and they basically kind of like get a police escort to work because this guy all of a sudden thinks it's amazing what they do.
I love how this just immediately at the beginning of the movie sets up the hierarchy of like, all right, Virginia, the fact that they're women, that's at the bottom of the ladder of importance. The fact that they're black, that's slightly above that. The fact that they're in the fight against communism, that's right at the top.
Yeah, and you know they get to work, and we see kind of the way things are divvied up. Mary is sent off to help with the engineering. She's even requested by the engineer because he's worked with her before and knows that she knows her stuff. And he's the one that's encouraging her throughout the course of the movie to pursue that. Which I guess we'll just stick with that plot because it's easier that way. I guess.
It's quick.
You know, he tries to do that, and she's like, "Hey, I'm a black woman. This is Virginia. I'm not going to believe in something that's not possible." But he keeps kind of trying to like nudge her into it, and she does look into it. And Kirsten Dunst is very, very quick to be like, "Well, in order to apply to be an engineer at NASA here, you have to have these types of qualifications." And she's like, "Well, I've got this degree. That should be enough, is it not?" It's like,
I have literally all the qualifications. I don't see what the problem here is.
Well, now we also expect these two extended qualifications where you have to get some extra credits from a course at the university.
And they immediately, like scene afterwards, they break it down and say, the only way to get these credits is to go to a school that is still currently white only. So while not technically being a race check, it is in function a race check for the role.
Yeah, and Kirsten Dunst's reaction when this is like brought up to her, she's like, "That's just the way things are. There's just not. Yeah. It's just impossible."
Well, yeah, she specifically rules it out of like, I expect the same of everyone who works under me. Nobody's getting any special treatment here. But then they cut to that scene saying that like she physically cannot go and take this class, and it just goes to show whether or not
it's the anti-special treatment. It's
right.
What's the opposite of special treatment?
Prejudice.
Aye, there you go. We'll go with that.
Yeah, no, it's this idea, and I love the way Kirsten Dunst plays this character, because later on in the movie with Octavia Spencer's arc, she does kind of come out and say like, look, I know you view me as a bitch, I know you view me as racist, but like, I never had anything against you guys. And Octavia Spencer comes back to me like, I'm sure you don't see it that way. And I feel like that's the absolute descriptor of this character of like, yeah, no, I'm not racist, but I'm also not doing anything to not be racist.
Yeah, but there's also these little moments she has where like when Octavia Spencer like delivers her some paperwork, she's like, oh, we have runners for that. You shouldn't be here in the white person office. Like that's kind of, you shouldn't say that last part out loud, but that's the implication. And she's trying to kind of like circumvent any of that.
It's even worse than that. Like she specifically says, oh, we have runners for that. Just give it to the runners. And then she's like, oh, it's okay. I'm on my break. Don't worry about it. And then she's like, oh, well, in that case, we've got like 5 boxes over here. Why don't you take those with you? It's like, dude, she's on her break. What are you doing?
So, no, but, Mary does look into it. And the most interesting thing about her plot, actually, is the idea that her husband, or boyfriend, I think it's husband, but, her partner, husband, he, who's played by Aldous Hodge, he, like, basically has the attitude that she did when she first was suggested to go into engineering and get the education to apply for it. He's like, hey, that's not realistic. You can't be that, right? No one's going to let you be that. There's no point in having that your head in the sky. And it seems to be a point that kind of like of contention between them, where there's maybe a bit of a rift in the marriage because of this. And it kind of like pays off when she's actually going to her first night school class, where he comes in and gives her a gift of a bunch of pencils and is like hey, I believe in you. I'm not going to like make a fuss. Like, I'm going to support you as you do this kind of thing.
His character's a lot more locked in and kind of the mouthpiece of the darker racist things going on in the era. Like, he's specifically showing the kids, like, here's a news report of a bus that got bombed. Like, this is something that you need to be aware is happening. And it feels like he's trying to represent himself as a realist, whereas she's trying to just give her kids the hope and optimism that like things can get better.
Yeah. That was an interesting sequence just because nothing like that had really came up throughout the movie. So it was kind of like kind of stark to just sort of to cut to that. And it's like, I kind of appreciated it, but at the same time, I'm like, almost feels out of place because the movie's not really done anything like that until that point.
Yeah, I liked it in the moment, but looking back on it now, it is weird how it's the only time that happened. Like, if they every once in a while like threw something in to say like, just remember, no matter how good things are going for these girls, this is still the culture. This is still the larger idea of what's going on.
Yeah, like maybe every so often there was like a little signpost of something that happened, that month in 1961 that could be sort of referred to historically or something to give it some context of the times or whatever. I don't know. But her thing is that she has to go to a judge and basically appeal to be allowed to go to these night classes at this high school as an alternative. And she has to make this whole big speech to the judge and say, hey, you could be the man who starts this. You could be the one that incites change. Basically, it just says, hey, you'll be important if you're the one who sends the first black woman to an all-white school in Virginia. You'll be a big deal because of this.
I appreciate her playing the game. I appreciate her knowing this is what it takes. I hate the fact that like the judge is not ruling on a matter of law. He's ruling on a matter of like, I get to be famous. Nice.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, this didn't happen. So.
Oh no, I'm sure it didn't. But like, I'm taking the movie as it did.
Well, yeah, because the one of the things I read here was that she basically just appealed to the school board, and it was, I think, accepted.
I mean, from what I was reading, I was just glancing over that narrative. There was that the school itself wasn't even like really segregated. Like it wasn't even like really a white only school. It was just kind of like run down and dilapidated to an extent.
Yeah, but this whole her making a speech to a judge, regardless, was completely fabricated for the movie. So, at least that's if you don't like the content of it, then at least you don't have to worry about the fact that it happened. So that's something. Yeah, and then basically you see her go to her first class, and you see all the white guys in the room all stare at her, and let the teacher be a little confused. I did like the line of dialogue the teacher had, which was, "Oh, this course is the syllabus is written around teaching men," and she's like, "Pretty sure it'll teach just the same way to women," and that, which is exactly what my thought was. I'm like, why would it be any different to teach a woman? But we
don't have a section on balancing your checkbook or getting groceries.
Honestly, her walking in the room and everyone's staring, it felt a little bit repetitious, just because that was kind of what happened with Catherine's character when she first went into the the main room, when she got the new assignment. So it was almost like regurgitating the same sort of material again. So by that point I was like, yeah, okay, I get it. Yes, all the shocked white men are all like, a black woman's in here? Oh, we're all hot and bothered by that.
Yeah, I will say that scene also comes after the halfway point. So while I'm sure that the people in there are like, oh no, a black woman, the attention, the dialogue is drawn to a woman. Like the fact that she's black is inconsequential for the most part of this sequence.
Yeah. And then that's basically the end of her plot, really. I mean, obviously you see her reacting to like stuff happening in the last chunk of the movie, but like that's where I'm getting at when I'm saying it feels that she's a little bit shortchanged, because ultimately that's it. Like, we don't even get to see kind of like, we see her tell her like engineer superior at work, who's been encouraging her, that she's put in, I think, for the court date to like argue her case to like get to advance in this. But I don't even think you get like a like, oh, I've got my first class, and he gives her encouragement or anything like that, or it doesn't, it kind of leaves dangling. And I guess it's because they thought, well, naturally that's going to take some time. I mean, obviously during the montage of the where are they now, or where did they go next, you do see her like in a graduation kind of outfit or whatever, so it's telling you that she did finish, obviously, at some point. But
although to be clear in the historical accuracy, it's literally saying that she already was promoted to full engineer in 1958, and this whole movie takes place in 61 to 62, so whatever.
Really? Okay. So that's her plot. It's actually very quick. Honestly, the husband having kind of a that's impossible attitude was the most interesting part, because he's the one who feels the most kind of politically minded and active, where he's like at the very least talking the game, where he's talking about how bad things are and how proactive people need to be, but he also thinks it's like not worthwhile of actually trying to succeed in the system. And then for him to sort of turn around and then kind of support her, there's actually a kind of an interesting story there, and like sort of him maybe kind of humbling himself a little bit and realizing that she can succeed in a way that he maybe wouldn't have thought of, like tackling it. There's like a story there that's very thin in the movie as it is, because it's very underserved.
Yeah, no, I could see an entire separate movie being made just about this one character, and it the idea of her becoming an engineer doesn't even need to be the end point. If anything, it's like first act or end of like second act, and then you go through this whole extra bit of her rising up the ranks at NASA and becoming like the senior engineer, and then the where are they now for her bit also says that she retired from that, or was this Catherine? I could be wrong. Retiring from the position and becoming like the head of the affirmative action and like women in NASA group.
That may have been Catherine, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, it's there's a story to be told there that feels so underserved by the plot that it is, where it's essentially like 3 scenes.
Yeah. It's very, very undercooked. And obviously she's there in the group scenes where they're trying to get Catherine to chat up with the Colonel, with Mahershala Ali's character, but like, as far as like her own plot goes, it feels very, very undercooked. And then Dorothy, Octavia Spencer's character, is very much kind of like, she's basically already acting as supervisor in the movie and is wanting an official promotion, and even says, I'm already doing the work of a supervisor because we don't have one. All I'm asking for is to be compensated as such.
Rookie mistake. You never start doing the work without getting paid.
But, she's handing out the assignments. She's kind of keeping everyone in line, and she's kind of looked over, and it's like, well, things are operating just fine without a supervisor. Why do we need one? Doesn't seem like it's necessary.
Yeah. She's like, because we have one. It's me.
Yeah.
Give money, please.
Yes, pay me now. But her whole thing is that they're bringing in a computer, right? Like an actual, what we think of as a computer. Well, the very, very early stage of what we think of as a computer.
We're bringing in the Univac.
Yes, an IBM. I did like that. What are those three initials again? IBM. What I love is that anyone who's younger than us probably doesn't even know what IBM is. It's because it's such a dated thing now. Movies like this keep newer generations informed that IBM was this thing, but yeah, they don't remember it actually still existing. No. I mean, that really existed when I think I remember seeing some ads for IBM when I was a kid, whatever it was doing in the 90s, but that was it.
I was going to say, I feel like all I remember for is printers.
Very possible. Very possible. Yeah. But yeah, she recognizes this is kind of coming and recognizes that this is going to do all of the calculations, so the human computers won't necessarily be needed that much anymore, and kind of decides to go and educate herself. And we kind of see at the start of the movie that she is very good with machines. She's fixing the car at the start. She's kind of knows her way around, that kind of thing. So she goes to the library, and there's a whole scene in the library where a white woman tells her she's not allowed in the main part of the library, and she ends up stealing the book to kind of get out of there. But she educates herself on how to work the machine and how to program it. And when the guys who are supposed to be operating it are struggling to get anything working, she comes in after hours and just kind of gets it all going and is able to get it running and printing out numbers.
I understand it's a shorthand. We don't need to actually see her sitting there rewiring things, doing whatever else. But the fact that they hook this stuff up, they go, oh, God, it's not working. We're going to go take a break. And then she walks in, looks at it for a quarter second and goes, that shouldn't be there. Click, click. Now it works. I'm like, all right, can we maybe make it look a little bit more difficult? This is brand new tech. This isn't just plugging in a printer. This is something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, but she gets it running, and basically, all the guys are shocked when they see it printing numbers, and oh my God, it's printing out numbers. It's giving us numbers. Dave, look at this. Numbers.
The numbers. What do they mean?
So she ends up kind of getting, asked to go over there and, help with that. And she...
Yeah, they specifically, they're fast forwarding a little bit. They show that the engineers are not able to keep up with whatever the IBM engineers are not able to keep up with whatever is going on that NASA needs them to do. And so Kevin Costner comes in and says, you better get more people working for you. And so they immediately go to the one woman who saved their asses before.
Yeah, but she refuses. She's like, hey, this is just for me. What about all the people that work with me? And Kirsten Dunst is like, well, they'll be kept on for now, but, once everyone's used to this IBM thing, we probably won't need them anymore. And she's like, well, they're capable, and it even showed that she went out of her way to teach them all how to run it. She did a class almost that works, saying, hey, this is going to replace us unless we're the only ones who know how to use it. So let's learn, and seemingly she ends up with a whole staff of people. And the payoff to this at the end is that Kirsten Dunst not only addresses her with her full name, unlike the rest of the movie where she keeps using her first name, she also says, hey, can you train some of the girls from my building in this machine? And I was a little bit cynical there. I was thinking, wait, so they can replace her ladies? But it felt a bit more like no, you're going to go treat her as the boss. So there's a group of white women at the end who have been said, hey, this is your supervisor, she's in charge here. And that felt like kind of a big difference from anything else earlier with Dorothy in the movie.
Yeah. And then she also is given the paperwork to say you are officially manager of the IBM section. You got that supervisor gig. Congratulations.
Yeah. It's not it's not as interesting as Mary's story, I think, conceptually, but to be fair to it, it does have a more, like, it's more full, it's complete. It feels like it starts off in a place and it ends with everything coming to a head.
It still feels significantly trimmed down. It feels like there could have been a full movie out of this, but unlike Mary's story, in this movie, we still get to the ending. We still get to the point where if we were to make a full movie, it would still end at this same point.
Absolutely. So that leaves Catherine, who is definitely our main character and is sent over to be the calculator in the I don't know, what was the name of the department?
the Space Task Group.
Yeah, the one's doing all the calculations for, like, you know, re-entry and stuff like that. Yeah. And she goes in, and it does kind of, you know, it does a lot of the tropes where no one's paying it, or everyone looks at her, but then, you know, everyone's kind of standoffish like with her.
The very first person that approaches her is like, hey, the waste bins weren't emptied yesterday. And she's like, I'm not custodian. And so she's immediately on the back foot of everyone underestimating her. Yeah,
there's several things here. The secretary character's kind of standoffish with her, especially when she asks where the bathroom is, and she's like, I have no idea where your bathroom is. Mm-hmm. And then everyone looking at her like she's some sort of leper because she dares to use their coffee pot. And, like, she has to turn around and look sort of stare at them all. And also, like, I mean, this would be stupid regardless. Don't get me wrong, this whole idea of having a separate goddamn coffee, like, machine. But it's like, all she's doing touching a tap. It's not like she's swimming in the coffee, right? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
You're right, Pete. Racism needs to make sense.
I'm just saying, as someone who is anal about germs and about like people touching things that I'm going to eat or drink, this doesn't make sense to me, and I'm a weirdo.
No, I get. Look, this is the number one thing whenever I think of the time period of separate but equal is the idea of the water fountains. Like, they have separate water fountains for whites and blacks, and that's insane to me because, like, it's water coming out of a pump. Like, why is this something that needs to have a separation here? It's baffling, but I feel like Coffee Pot is on that same ladder. If anything, it's a rung higher.
Yeah, and, you know, when they put out a separate little one with a, you know, a little sign on it saying it's just for her, basically, like, no one's filled it up, of course, so she has to go and, like, actually, like, make the coffee and do all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, the big recurring thing for her character in this first half is the idea, like you said, she needs to use the bathroom, and the only bathroom that she knows she has access to is all the way on the other side of the campus. So anytime she needs to use the bathroom, she has to essentially run in heels a half mile to get there, and then run a half mile back.
Yeah, and over the course of these several scenes, you know, Kevin Costner's noticing that she's not there and, like, Where's my calculator? Where is she? What's happening? And even though she's doing good work and she's you know impressed everyone with the Goodwill Hunting moment on the board and all the rest of it, you know, he's getting more frustrated with her absence and kind of demands an answer. You know, when she's been running back in the rain, her hair's all wet, and he's like, "Where have you been? You were gone for like 40 minutes yesterday. Where were you?" And she's like, "The bathroom." And he obviously reacts as if that's the most ridiculous, like, 40 minutes in the bathroom. What
it's
the
right
hell?
Down the hall. What are you talking about?
Yeah, what were you doing in there? And of course she's like, I don't have a bathroom in this building. I have to go all the way across to this other building, but you probably didn't know that. And then she kind of gets emotional and mentions the coffee
she crashes
and all that.
Out, like, justifiably so. This is her big moment, and I appreciate it. I think it's acted very well. It does a good job of showing the frustration the character is having here. It also does a good job of putting Kevin Costner in this place of, he was, you know, not racist within his own right, but his ignorance was leading to racist policies and other things festering underneath his watch. And I think it's a good turning point. I just wish there was more after it. I wish that we had the ability to have more big moments like this, because having it so early on relatively makes the back half feel a little bit empty.
Yeah, because once she walks out of the room, and she's done, he goes over to the coffee mugs and rips the label off and kind of looks around and kind of like shocked. And then it's like right after that, we basically cut to him with a crowbar banging the sign off the bathroom and saying that everyone uses the same bathrooms now. We all pee the same color at NASA, as you started this review off with.
It's a good moment. It's a good visual. I appreciate it, but in terms of what Kevin, really, you don't like that?
It's too, like, it feels so fake. It feels so Hollywood, like a big grandiose scene. This reeked of like Hollywood bullshit to me.
I mean, yeah, I can see that. I think still just like because it was the first time that Kevin Costner was really doing anything, it felt okay to me. What got me is as the movie progressed, he kept on doing things. He kept doing this sort of like, let's get you included in things. Let's still like allow you to do this, do that. And it's just like, okay, my guy, she's her own person. You don't need to act like her babysitter this whole time.
I don't know. Everything about it just felt very fabricated. It felt very kind of forced for the emotional. Like it wants the piano music to swell up. It felt, dare I say, a little manipulative.
Oh yeah, no. Look, as much as I'm saying I like the moment, I will fully admit that yes, it was manipulative. Like it just happened to work on me.
Yeah, like I'm not saying it's terrible. It's not terrible, but I'm not going to praise it. I'm not going to give it any kind of props either.
No, that's fair. If I can easily see a version of this movie that does it just a little bit better, where she comes in the next day and like there's a pile of signs like outside the door or something, or like she passes by some custodial workers or construction people taking down the sign, but having to be Kevin Costner with a crowbar does feel very performative.
Yeah, apparently from what I read, in reality, it was actually Mary who had to run in somewhere else to go to the bathroom. Catherine, on the other hand, just used the bathroom that was there, and even though she technically wasn't supposed to. And I think eventually someone complained, and then it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, she just ignored it, and they were like, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's the thing, is what the back half of the movie does seems to be the more accurate side of things, where everyone is so focused on the mission, they don't have time to be racist or sexist. And that's just extended throughout her whole story instead of having this magical turning point here in the middle.
Yeah, no, we do have some of that still, because we got Sheldon redacting every file he gives to her to check numbers, and she can't do it properly. And then when she does magically do her big whole Good Will Hunting moment, they're like, wait, how do you know about this and this? And she's like, oh, that tells a story. From what's there, I can tell. And he's like, okay, that explains this, this, and this, but this one last thing, there's no way you could have known that. Yeah. And she's like, I held it up to the light.
I love that bit because she goes through this whole little monologue essentially of just like, oh yeah, the numbers, like this, that, we have all these constants and you can figure out the variables from the constants. And then Kevin Costner's like, okay, but you literally use this super classified project name. That doesn't come out of variables and constants. She's like, okay, I may have also sneaked past the redacted stuff as well.
Yeah, Sheldon's an idiot, basically.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure the movie specifically says that he was the one who was doing the redacting, but
no, you see it. You see him with the highlighter. The first time,
that's right.
First time he hands her, so you see him before that squeaking across the page. So he's the one going through. And one of the things, I think when she holds it up to the light and you see a little bit of it, you see the thing that he's redacted, and it's like a nothing part of a sentence. That doesn't. It's almost like he's redacted extra bits just out of spite.
Peter, being an American right now, we've learned a lot about redacting files and how much you over-redact things. So I'm going to go ahead and just give him a pass on this one of just better safe than sorry.
Yeah, but he's still got an attitude. He's still doing stuff to the point where she's doing calculations the second half of the movie, and people are letting her get on with the work and seem to like respect the fact that she's really good at it. However, she's still doing work that is getting thrown in the trash because by the time she's finished doing it, something's changed. You know, like they're like, oh, the trajectories. Pardon me. Usually in twos, right? So the trajectories changed, the landing sites changed, this changed, whatever's changed, and because it's changing so often, the numbers she was working with are already irrelevant. And she's like, hey, can I go into the briefings where you're getting all these changes? Because at least I could then work as soon as possible rather than waiting to find out. And Jim Parsons, or Sheldon, is like, oh, that's just not possible. A woman can't go in there. Are you mad? Are you mental? That's not possible. And then, of course, Kevin Costner turns around and says, why is that so impossible? Think outside the box, Sheldon. And then, of course, Catherine looks right in his face and says, bazinga, and walks out of the meeting.
I was going to say the same joke if you didn't. Yeah, no. Here's the thing. And again, for the sake of the movie, I understand it. I understand what she's saying of like, oh, I need to be in these meetings to have the most up-to-date information, all that. However, I think the movie does itself a disservice where the first time she comes up to Sheldon and says, hey, can I get in on these meetings? The reason why she's asking is because they just changed the numbers. Now, if this were a thing where it was like, oh, we changed the numbers like 2 hours ago. Did you not hear about that? And so she's been wasting 2 hours of precious time working on this other thing. That'd be something. But instead he says, oh no, we changed numbers 6 minutes ago. And I'm like, her being in the meetings means that she still just has a 6-minute walk back to her desk. Like she's not saving any time by being in the meeting if they're going to update her on it within 6 minutes. I feel like they did a disservice here of having that and then saying like, oh no, but she needs to be in the meetings because she'll be working on it in the meeting, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously that's kind of what they do is that like Costner just says, hey, like, you know, give it a try when they're talking about the re-entry, like coordinates.
Right.
And she goes up
again, it's just kind of performative in a way. It's just kind of like, oh, look at Sheldon having to rifle through the papers. And it's like, yeah, I get that he would have taken an extra 2 minutes to find the information and then give the exact same thing. But I don't know. That was the sequence that felt worse to me than the bashing down the bathroom sign.
I think they're both very like glossy. They're both very kind of like Hollywood perfection kind of thing. Like, obviously I am completely okay with like, oh, like she's better at him than doing this. And that's like the point of the scene. But it just feels very kind of like, I don't know, like very archetypical to just have him like ruffling through his papers and she just sort of comes out with the answer and then goes up and shows everyone. Like, because the point of this scene more than anything is that she impresses John Glenn, and John Glenn's like, oh, I like her numbers. She seems to know exactly what she's doing. And that leads to something that did really happen in real life, is that he personally requested that she check the numbers for his re-entry. Now, what the movie does differently, though, is the movie has this happen like 10 minutes before he's going to take off. So it's this race against the clock. In real life, it was like 2 weeks before, so she had time to like, you know, double, triple check them and make sure everything was hunky-dory and so on and so on.
Look, it's weird, especially when they do this storyline in tandem with the other women, because obviously Octavia Spencer's character, Dorothy, is already by this point working on the IBM computer. She has all these people like doing their programs or whatever. But then the turning point for Catherine's story is that something went wrong with the program of the IBM computer and it's spitting out like two conflicting numbers. And so she has to be the one that runs these numbers. So by virtue of having her plot have this little climax right here, instead of just, hey, double check it because we're not totally confident in the computers, it instead gives this incompetence over to Dorothy's team, saying that they messed it up, but they never actually like mention that. It's just, if you read between the lines for a second.
The funny part, though, is that before that even, like, Dorothy's IBM crew, because they're up and running, that actually kind of gets Catherine, not fired, but, like, demoted back to just what she was doing before. Because, well, the IBM machine's doing all the calculations now, so we don't really need you here. I'm sorry, we'll try and find something better for you, but, like, sorry, you have to leave.
Oh, there's also one sequence that I need to mention, because it's the white savior thing, and it's so it's a choice they made, and it's the dumbest choice I think they could have made, which is the entire point of this back half of the movie in trying to get John Glenn into orbit and out of orbit and stuff like that, is that they have to create a new thing of math in order to make this happen. And we already talked about the basics of that, but the thing that allows them to make this leap is not anything that Catherine herself does. Kevin Costner comes in and says, what if we're not looking at new math at all, but instead old math? And then Catherine runs with that. Why in the hell would they not have just given that moment to Catherine? Like, why give it to Kevin Costner to have that be the little light bulb moment?
My only assumption is because he kind of represents lots of real people and not just one person, is that...
Well, I get what you're saying, but they changed so much. Just change this here. It's better.
Okay, yeah, sure. I'm just assuming that the real Catherine maybe didn't have that revelation. Like a team of people figured that out, and then she's the one that took it and then actually did the final equations and numbers and all that. And that's all they were trying to reflect that. I mean, I don't know. I'm just guessing.
No, I get what you're saying, but like literally, it robs her of the one thing that this movie was promising she would do. Like narratively, that's all they were saying was she is going to be the one that figures out this new math. And then, whoops, nope. Turns out Kevin Costner's actually the light bulb there. Yeah,
I do think it's funny though that the IBM machine, their chat GPT, if you will, makes a mistake and we have to rely on a human fixing it. Like, it's funny how even in 1961, this is already like already happening.
Computer's hallucinating. Fantastic.
I don't know. It's just funny to me. Yeah, because in the middle of all this, you know, Mahershala Ali proposes. We saw them like have like a picnic at one point together or whatever, and
that means they're in love. Let's get them married.
Yeah. I guess it was mildly interesting that all of her daughters and her mother were all in on the proposals because they all seemed to know what was going on. And I was like, did he ask for all of their permission? He's like, hey, I want to ask your mom to marry me. Is that okay with you?
I mean, that's implied in the scene. I thought that was kind of cute. The idea, he's like, I know that I'm marrying you, but like, I'm bringing this whole family on. I want to make sure everyone's okay with it.
Yeah. I mean, the mother character, maybe less so because that's your elderly parent. But like, yeah, the three kids, I'm basically saying, hey, I'm going to be their new father. So I'm giving them a bit of a choice in the say-so here.
Yeah. And I mean, of course they say yes. There's that's the thing about the family subplot for her. There is zero conflict in that entire bag. There's nothing at all goes wrong at any given point.
The only conflict of any kind is the first time he talks to her and she says what she does at work. He's like, oh, they let women do that? And then she obviously that is a bit of a cold response, and then he has to apologize.
She kicks him in the nuts and walks away.
But that's basically it. Once he's apologized for that, it's basically just nothing but happiness every single time you see them.
Yep. And I mean, that's how it happened. That's how it happened. I'm not going to say that's part of the bit of the Basis of Sex movie that we appreciated so much is the fact that the couple had a good marriage. They were supportive of each other. It's good to have that. I'm not saying that there needs to be something made up for the sake of drama, but I am going to point out when there's absolutely no tension or drama in half of the movie's like subplot.
I'll tell you what moment I did kind of like in terms of like showing like her kind of struggle is once she's done all the calculations right, you know, the guys run over to the building that all the ladies work in and he says, hey, they need this double checked, and she does that, and then she runs back. One, I liked how this mirrored the running back and forth to the bathroom as her running back with this paperwork at the end. But two, when they get to the room, the control room where all this is happening, and the door just gets shut in her face because she's not supposed to be in there, and it's like she's done all this work, she's been so integral to it, but she's not allowed a seat at the table. And that little moment of her realizing that and turning around to walk away, I thought was a much more, not subtle, but like a much more nuanced moment than like any big grand scene would be. And of course they do the thing where Costner opens the door like 10 seconds later with a badge and says, get in here, Catherine, you're integral to the team. And I'm like,
you messed up again.
But I get why, like, yeah, obviously give her that moment of like, she's earned her seat at the table and this is like someone acknowledging it. And that's nice to a point. But I think, honestly, the subtle things impress me more when it comes to stuff like this rather than the big grand gestures. Something as simple as during the where are they now or where did they go on next kind of part, something so simple as Sheldon brings her a cup of coffee. Right? So it's a simple visual. He hands her a cup of coffee as she hands the report back to him, where her name is also credited, because that was another point that came up, is that she doesn't get credit because she's just the calculator typing it up for him. He's the actual scientist or whatever. like that little moment I felt was a lot more like strong to me in terms of showing things had changed and showing, rather than the big grandiose, I'm going to like have a big speech and monologue and we're going to hit bathroom signs off of walls.
Right. Yeah. It's a balance for me, because while I do appreciate those smaller moments, I do want the actors to have room to stretch. I want to be able to see strong performances and like big bombastic moments like that. But yeah, you do run the risk of those bombastic moments are nestled in these overly saccharine or overly dramatic moments that don't feel like they fit with the rest of everything else going on.
Or melodramatic in some cases even.
Right.
As possible. It's just... I guess, like, to me, I see a lot of strength in performances when they can do a lot with little, right? And when I say little, I don't mean, like, little screen time or little script. There should be a hefty script, but not necessarily big, bombastic, like, oh, I'm going to bawl my eyes out and scream or yell or get angry. It's more like, oh, the little reaction to a moment that's just, it gives something away for a split second and then, like, they go back to trying to hide it kind of thing. Like, that always kind of hits me a little bit harder than, oh, my, as much as I think she did great in the scene, oh, my hair's all wet and I'm going to unleash and finally say all the things that have been bothering me and are pent up and so on. So, anyway.
The bit that you were offhandedly mentioning there is that throughout the movie, because she's the computer and Jim Parsons is the scientist, his name is supposed to go on to all of her calculations, and she doesn't get credit for it, but then she starts like putting her own name on there. And again, realistically, if this is what's happened, so be it. I'm not going to argue the point, but I do think there could have been a little moment where, like, after she's been chastised for it, or after she's in a lower moment, you can tell she's starting, like she's going to type it out, but then like hesitates and doesn't actually, like, just one time, just to show like something has made an impact, something has happened there. But instead, each time she's pushing for it, she's always trying to get her name on there. And then each time Jim Parsons is like, no, I'm misogynistic. That's my thing.
Yeah. I mean, I really don't want to come across too harsh, because it's perfectly fine. It's that type of movie that, like, is very feel good, despite the fact that it's tackling a subject that in theory could be a lot more depressing. But it's meant to be this feel good story of overcoming it. But it's got a little bit of that, look at how far we have come since then. Shouldn't we all feel good about ourselves? And I'm like, I don't know. We still have a lot of problems in the world. This isn't,
Yeah. There's another movie that came out around this time. It might have been around the same year, but it's following Alan Turing. It's with Benedict Cumberbatch, called The Imitation Game.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's got its flaws. I'm not going to say it's a perfect movie by any means, but the one thing that I did like about it in the end is that while it does follow like this character of saying, okay, here's how far we came with computers and how he invigorated this whole field of computing science and whatever else like that, the end of the movie does take a moment to say, and then we treated him horribly because he was gay. Here's this bad thing we did after the fact. And as much as the movie itself feels like we are treating him with this level of respect for what he did, I feel like that's the filmmakers, that's the producers, and they are kind of turning the mirror to the audience and saying, but then we failed him. We did awful things after that point. Whereas this movie, it's focused on racism. It's focused on all this stuff. It's not like by the end of the movie, all of the separate but equal stuff was fixed in Virginia and everything was fixed there.
But the end of the movie feels that way, though. It feels like, oh, this is all fixed. It's all fixed now.
Yeah, it's like, oh, she got the Presidential Medal of Honor. Everything's great. Nobody had any bad times at all after this moment.
Yeah, because Imitation Game, it's a good point about the ending and how it does show that, oh yeah, the world failed him. Society failed him after the fact. That was a good choice. I will say, though, the rest of that movie is a very similar boat to this one. It's very much this kind of sentimental look, historical movie. You can kind of put them all in the same basket. You know exactly how they're going to feel, how they're going to play for the Oscar voters, and... Right. That's it. That's what they are. And it fits into that mold pretty easily and doesn't take any big swings that make it feel like it's, shooting for something extra, right? It's doing what it is. I won't quite call it formulaic per se, but there's definitely a tool set and a style of the tone and the way it presents most of its story Imitation Game did have that part at the end where, hey, we kind of have to acknowledge just how tragic everything after what we told was, so we're going to do that. And it was probably the most poignant part of the whole movie was that. Here, you know, it's like, everyone happy, married for a long time, and, you know.
I mean, look, again, I don't want them to invent tragedy. If they genuinely had a great life after that point, then so be it. That's fine what it is, but it does feel like it's glossing over what the period was, as if them being successful solved the deeper issues.
Yeah, like it's obviously a phenomenal positive step, but it doesn't change the fact that this other stuff's going on at the same time, or that there's going to be many more fights to come, or whatever it may be, you know?
Right.
So, I don't know. It's a very, very saccharine and sweet, and very much like, hey, look at like how much better things are now we can be. And yeah, these three people were real people. They accomplished great things. But a lot of the way the story's told is very fictionalized, perhaps even more so than a lot of biopics do, which is why it's had a bit of criticism for that over the years.
Yeah. I do also just want to point out that, you know, we phrase this as if the very last thing in the movie is she does the calculation and then...
No, we do the whole...
It goes in.
Scott Glenn's like in orbit and something might be going wrong. So you'll have to land and like, oh, maybe like there's like maybe 30 seconds where everyone thinks he might be dead, but then he's like, oh no, Capcom, I'm here, I'm fine, baby, launching parachutes.
And like, okay, you get to end on a happy note, like, yes, America, because they literally follow up that exact shot with that was the turning point in the space race. America started pulling ahead, and then we got to the moon first and said, all right, we win, that's the end of the space race. Like, I get ending it on that note, but it also, from the viewpoint of it being Catherine's story, she had nothing to do with any of that part. Like, none of that mattered. The only thing that she had to do was, they specifically said that she calculated that he would land in a specific area so that way he could be found significantly faster by helicopter and get pulled out, which we don't even get to see. We don't even get to see the part where helicopter comes and finds him quickly.
I was convinced because she was in the room and stuff started going wrong that she was going to do some on-the-spot calculations that would save the day or something, like, which, again, I would assume that would be made up if they did that, but it felt like it was maybe going to do something like that, and it never quite did.
The only bit that they specifically do is they're talking about whether or not to eject this retro thruster or something like that. And there's a bunch of characters going like, but will it hold? Will it hold as he's re-entering? And she goes, it'll hold. And nobody questions it again after that.
Yeah, they'll learn to trust her. I mean, I guess you could read into it as like, oh, we finish off that because one, the movie's been building up to them doing this particular mission, but also maybe you could argue it represents like all the work coming together of all these different people, and look at what we can achieve when we are all working together, and you know, we accept that there's amazing people of all kinds that can do different parts of this, and so on and so on. I don't know. Like it's kind of there, it kind of works. But you know, cue the piano music. Here's what they all went on to do afterwards.
Look, obviously we're wrapping up here, but I do just want to bring up, it did have a lot of other like licensed music, and it was very modern, but like peppy, upbeat, obviously by artists of color, and I liked it. It never felt like it was getting in the way of the movie, but it also felt like it was making a very clear statement with it. It felt like it was a very intentional choice to have modern music playing over this period piece. Yeah.
It has a particular... They all feel like they belong together, all the songs. It doesn't feel like, there's like wildly different genres necessarily. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's got a tone that it's striving for the entire time. And, that tone is uplifting. It wants to be uplifting. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It just feels a little bit duller to me to just be nothing but uplifting. I guess because it feels like, it's like we're just going to remember the positive story and not like some of the hardships that were actually like, something that we're worried about, at the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, we do this season of Herstory in order to show these women in history who went through and did these things. But the only reason that it feels important to do that is because of the hardships that they endured, because of the stuff that went through them. By glossing over that, by not giving it the time that it really feels like it should, it's almost doing a disservice in a way. And I guess that's kind of the, there's a somewhat modern sentiment on racism of, is it better to bring up racism in the fact of trying to fix it? Or is it better to ignore racism and that will make it go away? Like, is bringing up racism perpetuating racism, even if it's to fix it? And I feel like that's the same sort of argument here, where it's like, do we present these women as just fantastic women in their own right and ignore the fact that the sexism was going on? Or do we point out how the sexism made them more spectacular because they overcame that?
I think you point it out. I think you absolutely do. And I think there's stuff that's kind of glossed over. Yeah, you get one scene of like Catherine's kids being like, oh, we never see you because you're working too much. But it never becomes more than that. It never becomes a conflict where her home life's hard because her kids feel like she's abandoned them or anything like that. It never becomes anything, just more than a quick footnote at one point. Right. And it's the same with Dorothy has kids. We see her with her kids. They were with her at the library, and we do get a little speech where she's talking to them on the bus about like authority in the world they live in. Yeah. But it's
if you act right, then you are right.
Yeah. And they see a protest trying to end segregation in the street at one point, and they walk past that on the way to the library, and it's like, okay, it's peppering a little bit of what's going on, but not a ton. Right, it's very limited to like that, and then the news report we mentioned earlier is pretty much it. Yeah. So, I don't know. It's if everything feels like I say, that word glossy is the word that keeps coming back to me in saccharine. It's just like feel good, to have a feel good story, and I'm like, yeah, but it would feel even more special if it felt like I got the full breadth of what they overcame to actually pull off some of these things, as opposed to just the heartfelt, isn't it great they did this kind of side of it.
Yeah, I think where I came in more positive on this, and I agree that it's saccharine and all that, but my positivity comes from a comparison between this and On the Basis of Sex, where I felt like that one was so performative with the things that it was doing, whereas this one felt like it did make it just a bit more subtle in some of how like the racism was affecting people. And like I said, how it isn't this thing of having a mustache twirling like, oh, we're racists and we're proud of it sort of thing. It's no, we are just adapt to the times. Like, this is how it is for us, and we aren't even recognizing what we're doing as a bad thing. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to write this kind of thing, and I don't really envy anyone who has to write like a nuanced story about this, but I don't think this gets all the way there in terms of being like a hard-hitting piece for me. But
that's fair.
All right, David, what are you rating Hidden Figures out of 10?
7. Look, I know I go in and on and I say like all this stuff, but like I'm looking at the ratings I gave this season, and I'm looking specifically on the Basis of Sex, and while I do feel like this one is better, I gave She Said a 7.5, and I don't feel like this is better than She Said. So
no, I don't think so either.
I'm just stuck in the same rut of 7.
Yeah, I am going 6.5. I think it's decent. But I wouldn't quite call it good because I think it is a bit too Hollywood, too saccharine. And one of the things that came up during the ratings rundown, which is a bonus segment you can get on Patreon, is we're talking about the Sexual Tension Award, and I was talking about how, like, even though there's technically a romance in this movie, there's not a shred of actual sexual tension going on there. And it's not that they don't have chemistry. It's not that they're both likable, attractive people or anything like that. It's just so sanitized in PG that any of the actual oomph behind it is just not there. And maybe that is almost a microcosm of how I feel about the whole movie, is that it's so sanitized for a sort of friendly Hollywood audience that it's just lacking any of the bite that I would actually like feel stronger for in any way. And I hate smoking, but it's kind of weird that in a movie set in 1961 not a single character smokes the entire time.
Yeah, That's fair. I didn't even realize this movie isn't even PG-13. It is just PG.
I'm not surprised, honestly.
Like, I don't feel like I remember the last time I see a just PG movie. This must have been it. I think they got rid of the entire thing because no studio's ever going to go PG.
Well, maybe like a hard Pixar movie, one that's not not a G.
All right, well, look, outside of Disney, I'll put it there.
Like, someone says ass in this Pixar movie. It's a PG instead of a U, or a G for the Americans. Sorry.
I mean, that was the whole transgressive thing. Every time they introduce a new curse word into the MCU, it's like, Star-Lord's going to say shit.
Yeah, eventually he said an F-bomb.
He did. Congratulations.
Yeah, let's see, one F-bomb in a PG-13 and he got away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Madness. Anyway, that's our ratings on Hidden Figures. Does it make the cut? I mean, cutting it close here for me. I don't know where you feel.
This one is closer to makes the cut. Like, it's right on the cusp for me, but yeah, it's I feel like I'm doing it more out of a feeling of obligation. Like, it feels like it should be in makes the cut, but after everything we've said and everything we've gone through, I can't justify it. Yeah.
I think out of the 3 movies we did for this season, I definitely like She Said the most. And it wasn't perfect. It was definitely a bit dry in some ways, but it was the most raw. I felt the most things from it. It felt like it got across. And maybe part of the bit, obviously, one of the advantages that movie had is that it's such a recent thing that the people involved are there to like guide it and like help, to make it to fruition. And it's like, it's a subject that was well documented in an era where everything's so documented. Whereas this stuff, and on the basis of sex, some of the people were still alive when the movies were made, but like, those things happened 60 years ago. Like, they are a long time. Even the people who were involved, like, their memories aren't going to be that perfect. Whereas She Said had the advantage of, no, these 2 people wrote a book about it within a year of it happening, and that book was turned into the movies. So
yeah, I mean, I would also say that the most recent 2 movies, not counting She Said, are ones that more or less focus on a protagonist, someone who is doing something, whereas She Said it has protagonists, but the focus of the story is the horrible things that happen.
Like the real thing.
And so the tone of the movie is just fundamentally different in how it wants to present itself. And I think we're both agreed that we prefer that more than we prefer this idea of let's follow protagonists as they do all the right things and succeed in the end.
I think technically that could make for a better movie. I just think that the tone that both of these movies went for didn't click for me. Maybe it never would have worked, but at the very least, the tones they did with these 2 movies did not click with me, and I think that's where I'm feeling. So, but there you go. That is Hidden Figures. It's obviously, yes, the story it's telling, or the people it's trying to tell us about, very important and should be remembered. But the way it does it maybe isn't necessarily make for the best movie in the world. So. But hey, so next time on Collector's Cut, we are on to a new season, a new voyage. Over the next 7 weeks, we'll be doing a season of John Woo movies, specifically his films from Hong Kong, right? I'm sure his American films will pop in and out of stuff. In fact, we already did Mission Impossible 2 as part of Mission Impossible season. So, yeah.
I forgot that was John Woo, and now I'm scared.
Well, at least the 1 or 2 of these that I have seen, sorry, the one of these that I have seen is definitely better than Mission Impossible 2. I can safely say that.
All right. That's literally the lowest bar, so I'll take it.
So yes, we'll be starting that off next week with Heroes Shed No Tears, and we're just doing them in chronological order of when they were released, nice and straightforward. But that is what we're kicking off with. Heroes Shed No Tears is next week's episode of Collector's Cut. But you can, of course, like, subscribe, all that usual stuff, but mostly you can support Collector's Cut as well as the Atomic Cinema Experiment, or sci-fi movie podcast, which is also me and David, and Screams After Midnight, the horror podcast that I do with Tim, can support all three of those shows over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses for your trouble, such as the ratings rundown segments that we do for each episode. And once a month, me and David do a bonus show called Extra Reels, where we review some of the worst movies ever made. So if that sounds like fun, you can check out that. So yeah, in fact, later this month, we're in May now, we will be doing The Room, arguably the most famous bad movie ever made, because our patrons voted for it. So there you go.
I think I said this on some other episode where you pimped The Room, but if we can come up with one thing that has not been said about that movie, I'll consider it a success.
I'll come in with some notes. I'll be prepared with some wild takes.
You know what? I was actually cleaning out my room the other day, my office here that I film in, and I came across like the notebook that I wrote notes down for like Dirty Harry and stuff, and I was like, wow, when did I stop doing this?
That's a good question. I didn't notice your quality of conversation went down at some point.
Yeah. I rely on IMDb trivia. That's what gets me through the day.
Yeah, about 4 good episodes, and it went all downhill, and here we are. You know.
We didn't even finish Dirty Harry season. It was 4 episodes, and that's it.
Yeah, and here we are, 150 episodes or so later, and it's been just a cavalcade of shit since then.
Yeah, well, I'm only as good as my co-host.
Yes. Anyway, that's the show, everyone. That's been Collector's Cut. That is us talking about Hidden Figures. John Woo season starts next week. Look forward to that for something very different from these last few movies. I'm willing to bet. So cool. We'll see you for that. Keep watching movies, and of course, if you can get it, it's always nice to have diplomatic immunity.